People are always asking me about Jewish people in American history, and I think it's educational, and that's why that it's not only maybe in the arts, the sciences, and lawyers and doctors, which we will touch upon, because not just your regular physician or regular lawyer in the street, but very famous lawyers and doctors were in American history and made, actually, of course, the American life as we know it today. So I hope you enjoyed our Civil War military progress of the Jewish heroes, but this way at least it removes the false connotation that Jewish people are not military people. When it comes time to be in the armed forces, they're up there with everybody else. Thank you very much. Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today we're going to talk about more Jewish heroes of America. Recently we talked about Jewish heroes in the Civil War, just to say that there were Jewish people in those times, even though the mass emigration came around the turn of the century. Nevertheless, that there were military heroes even at those earlier times. And in another time, we will talk about other Jewish military heroes of the World War I, World War II, Korea, and the Vietnam War era. The Jewish people participated also. But we're not going to talk about the military aspect, even though that we said there's enough material to talk about. There's enough heroes to talk about a few shows. But we're going to talk about a different area in American life, and that we're going to talk about a little bit about business, commerce, and the arts. Of course, the Jewish people, of course, have made a big mark in America also. And we're going to we'll get back over 100 years ago. We're back into the 19th century. As shows progress, that we'll try to get into the 20th century up to today. But just again, many Jewish people think that their grandparents came, like I said, the turn of the century, and there really were Jews in the Revolutionary War. There was really Jews in Civil War. We only knew it about 100 years ago, not that early. And there were Jewish people, not so many, it's true, but again, there weren't that many Americans either at that time. But here we're going to talk about, and many people know this person's name because they're wearing his pants. And that is Levi's pants. And Levi is a good Jewish name. And that was Levi Strauss, the originator of Levi's. And people wear his pants, and Jewish people always know that Levi, or you could say Levine, is a Jewish name, Levinson. Many derivative of the name Levi. It's a biblical name, the third son of Jacob. And we're going to talk about his rise in the business world until even today, over 100 years later, people are still wearing his pants. When the cry was heard, "There's gold in them there hills," Being an experienced merchant and not a miner, a thought flashed in Levi's mind. He would take the tough canvas cloth and make this man a pair of pants. He went immediately to a tailor who made the pants for the man to wear. It didn't take long before Levi was overrun with orders for the new trousers. It seemed that the miner had been bragging to his friends about the durability and virtues of Levi's canvas pants. The above story is one of the many versions as to why and how Levi's were first made. The true history was burned up when the 1906 San Francisco earthquake destroyed the records and history of the Levi Strauss Company. Meanwhile, Levi wrote to his brothers in New York asking them to ship him more canvas cloth. The demand for canvas cloth pants was growing daily. Everybody wanted Levi's. Strauss gradually started making pants from a durable material called denim, which consisted of cotton threads woven into a twill pattern. Levi was the first to start coloring them dark blue using an indigo dye. One of the problems that many miners had was their pocket seams burst because they would stuff the ore in them. Jacob Davis, a tailor, was buying material from Levi and making pants for the miners. To try to solve the problems of the pockets, Davis riveted them to the denim material. Davis patented the copper riveting process in 1870. Davis had turned out many pairs of pants with riveted pockets before Levi, and he formed a partnership in 1873. Their business grew as word spread throughout the country about the durability of their pants. Cowboys used them because they endured the roughness of the saddle and long rides on horseback. Factory workers used them to protect themselves from the grit and grime. Soon the fashion world made them the in thing to wear. Levi Strauss was born in Bavaria in 1829. His father, Hirsch Levi, was a dry goods salesman who had 4 children by his first wife and 2, Fanny and Levi, by his second wife, Rebecca Hess. After his father died in 1845, they emigrated to the United States in 1847. Strauss never married. He died on September 26, 1902 in San Francisco, leaving millions of dollars to Jewish and non-Jewish organizations. The University of California still has the trust fund that he donated, which awards 28 scholarships annually. Levi Strauss was a philanthropist who will always be remembered for his charity, as well for his fashion world, jeans. Well, it's an interesting story. Many people came from, like you see, as we talked about when we talked about the Jews of the Civil War, that they really did come from Europe, but they did soon enough and speedily made their mark in American life. And talk about immigration to America, and we did say the big immigration came from 1880 to 1920. Of course, the biggest symbol in America is the Statue of Liberty. For the millions of people who did immigrate to the United States, this was their first sign that, yes, they have arrived in the great United States. Now, there's a major poem that most people should know, or you remember that you were taught this. Jewish themes, even when her poems and ballads of Heinrich Heine appeared, she considered him in her introduction as more of a German than a Jew. She stopped being a pleasing literature when she read George Eliot's novel Daniel Deronda, which called for a national Jewish revival. Her interest in what was happening to the Jews in the world was further reinforced with the Russian pogroms of 1881-82. Lazarus started to translate the works of Jewish poets. She wrote essays and commentaries attacking and responding to the anti-Semites of the day. The precociousness of her youth was gone, and her maturity as an adult woman came to the fore with her concern for the plight of the immigrants and Jews. She became especially interested in the plight of the Russian Jews as she encountered them on Ward's Island, where they landed from overseas and where she did volunteer work. In her writings, Lazarus set forth her ideas and plans for the rebirth of Jewish life by a national and cultural revival in the United States and in the Holy Land. In 1883, Lazarus went to Europe, where she was acclaimed for her poems and writings. She was at the prime of her life as a writer and as a person when she was stricken with cancer. Lazarus was only 38 years old when she died. She will always be remembered for her work and concern for the huddled masses who came to this country to be free, the interests of Jews, in her poems and essays. So right away we have someone who, in their cultural, felt for the immigrants, for the Jewish people that should come over and did come over in the masses, and she was really the symbol of all immigrations coming to the free democratic world. Well, we're really going from one field to the other, and now we're going to be talking from business to art, if you want to say the poetry, literature, and we're going to go to Jacob Henry Schiff, hero of finance and philanthropy, back into the business world, but now with the big business. Jacob Henry Schiff was born on January 10, 1847 in Frankfurt am Main, Germany. He was the son of Moses and Clara Niederfheim Schiff. He was descendant of a distinguished rabbinical family that could trace his lineage back to 1370. He received a secular and religious education as the Israelite Religionschaft, a local school. At age 18, Schiff emigrated to the United States and became a citizen. He went to work in a brokerage firm in New York, and he later became a partner in Budge, Schiff and Company. He met and fell in love with Theresa Loeb, the daughter of Solomon Loeb, head of the banking firm Kuhn, Loeb and Company. They were married on May 6, 1875, and he entered her father's firm. In 1885, he was named head of the firm because of his financial abilities. Schiff was a strong advocate for the gold standard, and he opposed the Silver Purchase Act of 1890. Despite his success in the financial world, Schiff always felt that he had a special obligation to the Jewish people. He fulfilled the commitment through his philanthropies. Schiff was a Reformed Jew, but he still retained many of the Orthodox habits of his youth. He was especially active in the establishment and development of the Jewish Theological Seminary and the Hebrew Union College. He was a large contributor to the relief programs for the Jewish victims of the Russian Tsar's anti-Semitic pogroms. There was hardly a Jewish organization which was not the recipient of his contributions. His interest and love for Jewish literature found him contributing generously to the Jewish Publication Society. He funded a program for a New English translation of the Bible. He helped to establish the Jewish division in the New York Public Library. Schiff was always concerned about humanity and sickness. He contributed heavily to Montefiore Hospital in New York, where he served as president for 35 years. During those years, he visited the hospital weekly, contributed generously to many Jewish and non-Jewish organizations, which included the Semitic Museum at Harvard University, which still today you can visit in and I have in a few times. It's very interesting. Gave $1 million to Barnard College and contributed to the American Red Cross, Tuskegee Institute, the Henry Street Settlement, etc. He was one of the founders of the American Jewish Committee. He was active in the Jewish Welfare Board, which ministered to the needs of World War I Jewish soldiers and sailors. He was also active in the Joint Distribution Committee, which helped to relieve the suffering in Europe during the war. Schiff was active in the civic affairs of New York City. He served for many years on the Board of Education. In 1904, he was approached to run as mayor of New York City on the Republican Party ticket. He refused because he didn't want to give up his charitable activities. Jacob Henry Schiff died on September 25, 1920, in his beloved New York City. Through his activities and philanthropies, he left behind a legacy, a man's humanity to man, for all Americans to emulate. Well, I think that's a good idea that people do have the money, and no one's denying that they should have money. If they're good business people and they can make it, then very good, let them make it. But still, a person has to remember, if they are fortunate to be well off, then they still have, I think, an obligation, or at least a moral obligation, at least, to help other people out, and surely people need that. So let them make money and let them help people, and let this be an example to many of the people today. Well, talking about the business side of the coin, I don't know if it's the other side of the coin, but it's labor. And of course, there's the president of the corporations, but of course nothing's going to get done without the people working in them. And of course, they're special also, and they had their own struggles in America. And actually, the leader of the unions, or the founder of the unions, was a Jewish person himself. So we're going to look at the labor side of the coin of business, and we're going to look at Samuel Gompers, leader of the American Federation of Labor, or as we know today, AFL. In 1877, his union strike collapsed because it had no money or member discipline. Following the strike, Gompers reorganized the cigar makers and remained as president of the union. Lessons were to be learned from the strike. The international officers became supreme over the local unions. The dues were raised to build up a strike fund. Benefits were established for sickness, accident, or unemployment. In 1881, after other unions had emulated the Cigar Makers Union program, the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions of the United States and Canada was formed. Gompers was chairman of the Committee on Constitution. The Federation was reorganized in 1886, was renamed the American Federation of Labor. Gompers was its first elected president. What made this federation unique was that there could be only one affiliated craft union. Gompers felt that labor could not displace capitalists in the management of business. He was criticized for being vice president of the National Civic Federation, which sought to promote stable labor relations through collective bargaining and personal contact between labor leaders, industrialists, and bankers. In World War I, he supported President Woodrow Wilson's policies and organized a War Committee on Labor. The committee included representatives of labor and business. After the war, Wilson appointed him as a member of the international labor legislation. He fought those who would erode the gains that labor had made during World War I. In 1894, Gompers became the editor of the official journal of the Federation. He maintained the journal until he died. He wrote many articles on labor for the publication. During all of his years as president of the Federation, Gompers had time for his family. He was family-oriented and believed in family loyalty. He had 5 children, 3 sons and 2 daughters. His wife died in 1920. A year later, he married Grace Gleaves Newskyler. Gompers was elected president for the last time at the 1924 convention. He had come to the convention knowing that he didn't have much time to live. He died on December 13, 1924. For almost 4 decades, Gompers had been the dominant figure in the American labor movement. He had broadened the horizons of the working man and his trade union. He was a pioneer in making the American labor movement free and strong. So it goes both ways, it seems like, and this is what really the point I try to want to underline in this little telecast that we're trying to make, is just that the Jewish people have been many on the fronts, and we talked about the military front. Now we're talking about the business front, and on one hand they are the industrialists, and the other hand that they are the labor people. So really, we cannot categorize Jewish people in any one area in America. We really have to look at the gamut of every kind of way, from the private to the general, to the corporate president, to the labor on the production line, which is, I think, the way we have to see it, because it's important. People classify and the Jewish people in one way or the other, and it's, in one sense, they're in America just like everybody else. That they, like I said, they're the rich and they're poor. They're the smart and the not so smart, and just about like everybody else is. And to characterize the Jewish people as one thing or another is really is not the proper way to look at it. Like I say, that they were the leaders in a lot of senses, and in many other senses they weren't. I am going to leave to a future to wet your tongue. They're talking about the arts, which of course the Jewish people, we're talking about Gershwin and Molly Pecan, El Jolson, and can go on and on, really. That would take about 20 shows to talk about all the Jewish people in Hollywood, and really that's a major idea in itself. And the sports heroes, which I don't know if we can say that many to Jewish sports hero, but we're going to leave that for another show also. But since we're talking about the World War I era, we're going to talk about the military again, as we said at the beginning, and since we moved up to that